Welcome to today's show. Today's guest is the occult symbol spiritual beliefs researcher for Phantom Detectives LLC. He's a paranormal investigator, writer, researcher, esoteric minister, Reiki master and teacher, psychic medium, and child advocate. She got interested in the paranormal at a young age, watching documentaries with her dad. And when she started hearing and seeing things no one else could, her interest came to fruition in 1994 after the death of her closest friend. Many told her he wouldn't go to heaven because of his suicide, which started her on her quest for knowledge. At 20 years old, she was in a severe car accident and was what first responders stated as dead and had a near death experience. Over the last decade, she has put a primary focus on spirituality and occult research, working on teaching investigators the importance of the client's spirituality in the investigative process, along with the importance of historical research. She also strives to aid others in a better understanding of occult symbols. She has been investigating for over 30 years and has had the opportunity to investigate many locations throughout the United States, having spent a large amount of time in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, researching intelligent and residual hauntings. Please join me in welcoming Holly Faust. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Appreciate you coming.
I appreciate you having me.
I hear from a lot of people that I interview that as children, they see and hear things that they can't explain. And a lot of how things turn out depends on how the adults raising them respond to the situation. How was it with your dad and other adult figures who knew about
My
this?
dad, I really didn't talk about it a lot with him because when I had said something to my mom was a devout Catholic, and she freaked out and took me to our parish priest and told him to
Oh,
exorcise
no.
me. So
Oh,
I kind of stifled it for a very long
yeah.
time.
Yeah. I do definitely hear that a lot.
Yeah, I
Absolutely.
definitely kept it probably until my mid-20s is when it finally came back out again.
So weird because I stifled the gifts that I had to, and it wasn't because my mom was a devout Catholic. She was, but it wasn't that she received it the way your mom did. She more or less kind of just didn't think it was anything. It was they were nightmares, and it wasn't anything. So I used to have premonitions as a kid, and they were pretty simple things, but when something really traumatic happened, they came to me in dreams. That's when I shut down. And it wasn't until I was 30 that I started picking up where I left off. And I find it very intriguing how everybody's situation is so different. There are kids that were like you and I that had these experiences, and they had families that were extremely supportive and helped them to grow their gifts. And I see them now, the same ages that I am, and they're so far more along than I. I know we all have our journeys and stuff like that, but it just is very intriguing to see the similarities in how they turn out.
Yeah, I've noticed that too with a lot of kids I've worked with and even my own.
Your children are gifted too with the spiritual.
All three of them had some sort of gift. My oldest chose to ignore his and stifle it. The middle one doesn't like to deal with it at all, and my youngest one is all into it.
Isn't that funny? Out of my two, the one is afraid of it, and the older one is embracing it and trying to learn what she can. So it's interesting that you would say that.
Yeah,
Maybe the ones that shut it down might change their mind later on. That's also something that I've seen a lot with people that I've interviewed, that they might have shut it down and then later on picked it up or weren't interested or what have you. Something happens that is so poignant in their life that says, I got to figure out what this is. So
right.
it must have been very upsetting for you when people were so inconsiderate and said to you, your best friend wouldn't go to heaven because his death was a suicide.
It was so hard because He was I had experienced death in my life before that, but he was, oh my goodness, my closest friend since, like, kindergarten. I still have a little necklace that he gave me in the 1st grade when he came up and kissed me on the playground and said, "Will you be my girl forever?"
Oh,
And, and a lot of it was because of, his sexuality and the fact that people couldn't accept who he was.
rough. Has he ever come to you since death that you've seen him?
Yes, I was actually at, an event, at a seance, and I started like, things were happening in the room, and people were asking questions, and I was shying away from asking, "Are you with me?" Or, "Is it you?" And then people are like, "Did you commit suicide? Are you sorry for what you did?" And then finally someone else in the room said, "Are you here with Holly?" And the table started shaking and the curtains started blowing, and I was like, "Oh boy."
Oh, that's how you know.
And then that night when I was driving home, because it was about an hour and 20-minute drive for me home, I literally looked in my rearview mirror on the interstate and I could see him sitting in the back seat of my car. And, and I know he's still with me because things happen. He was a comedian, a trickster. He liked to joke with people. And I've had my middle child has had an experience where she's had soap thrown at her in the bathroom. Um, we had one of the younger boys, that's a heavier boy, that came to the house and slept over, and he had cookbooks thrown at him in the middle of the night to the point he still won't sleep downstairs alone. So I know that's him because that's the type of person he was
Do you ever acknowledge him though and try talking to him?
all the time.
Oh, that's good. And have you ever had actual communication where he's spoken to you and stuff?
I've never had him actually speak to me, but I'll find things or see things that I know are from him.
Hmm.
But he
Yeah,
hasn't really come through, and I try to get him to speak to me, but I guess he's not interested. I think he likes to just play his tricks more.
I love those nuances that they send us. I'm constantly telling readers of mine when they ask, because you do have people that don't believe and will tell them that's not anything, don't
Right.
even go there. And I tell them you need to receive it and accept it, whatever it is that came to you. And in a message in your head, if it told you it's your mom or if it told you it's your dog, you need to believe it, because
Definitely.
if it came to you in a cloud and they let you know it's them, receive it and accept it and don't believe what anybody else says to you. And I'm always getting signs all the time in different ways. And I tell them it could be in coins, it could be in clouds, it could be in a dragonfly and a butterfly. As long as you receive it and accept it and know it in your head, that's all you need to know.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. That's what I always say too.
so you died and had a near death experience, huh?
Yes, it was. I didn't even know because I was watching everything from the snowbank next to my car. So I thought I was out of the car. And it wasn't until I woke up in the car and I started yelling. My friend actually was one of the paramedics on the scene. And I started yelling at him, "Just open the door. I was just out," because they were cutting me out with the jaws of life. And he kept saying to me, "You were not out of this car. You were literally dead." And, I remember.
Fascinated by this. I mean, I've
Yeah.
interviewed quite a few people about their near-death experiences. In fact, I devoted a whole chapter on it, and these people's encounters in my Warren County Hauntings and Other Strange Phenomena book.
Oh,
I
cool.
literally had a podcast discussion a few weeks ago with people who had near-death experiences. I wish I'd known that you did, because
Yeah.
I would have had you on, but we could talk about it now, right?
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
was
For
that
me,
experience for you? What happened?
Well, I was, traveling to work, and believe it or not, I had a four-wheel drive vehicle, and it was a really snowy, icy day, but where I lived, the roads were fine. And I made it up the big mountain, and I was doing fine, and then I got to this little tiny downhill slope, and I hit ice, and I panicked. I was, at 20, I hadn't really driven in bad weather, and when I slid, I hit the brakes. And then I started flipping with the steering wheel and I missed the first 2 telephone poles and hit the 3rd one, and my seatbelt didn't engage, so it threw me through the windshield. And then when I was partly out of the windshield, it pulled me back in. And I remember sitting on a snowbank crying, saying my dad was going to kill me and oh my goodness. And this old man came up to me and just told me, oh, you need to get back in the car. It's not time yet. And I woke up. And it was odd because my accident was right in front of the cemetery.
Wow. And you didn't know who the old guy was?
Nope, I had no idea, no clue at all who he was. All I knew is he was telling me I needed to get back in the car because it wasn't time yet.
Wow. So you didn't even have the telltale go to the light and go into the light experience that some people have.
Now,
That
I
is
honestly believe that it wasn't meant to happen. I wasn't supposed to be in that situation because even with like all the injuries and things, the biggest injuries that I had were to my head, of course, but this was back in the 90s. So I had big hair and lots of hairspray. So we were picking glass out of my hair for like weeks afterwards, but I had a cut on my finger.
that was it.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, even though I was, when they got there, I had no pulse, I wasn't breathing, and I had my friend panicking. My dad was at home, literally listening to it on the police scanner, and he knew it was me.
Wow. What a way to find out, huh?
Yeah, and he literally waited and let my mom get ready for work. And when she came downstairs, he told her, no, you can't go into work today. Holly was just in an accident.
Jeez.
So yeah, and he had said if he had seen the car before he had seen me, he would have thought he was coming to the hospital to identify a body.
Hmm. So you were able to just go home that night?
Yep.
Wow. You had a guardian angel, man. Telling you.
Yeah, I believe that. I believe that's who came and was sitting with me and calmed me down because I was more worried about the car.
And what dad was going to do and how he was going to
Yeah,
react.
exactly. Because we had just put a brand new transmission in the car.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy. That's amazing. So I know that people that have had near death experiences sometimes come back with gifts they never had or gifts that are more enhanced. Do you feel like anything like that ever happened to you after you had your near death experience?
I would get premonitions, but I always like, oh, I blew them off. I would think, nothing of it. And, I don't know because I don't know what gifts I would have had if I hadn't stifled them at such a young age. Because when I was a child, I was seeing apparitions. Basically, I was playing Barbies with my girlfriend and told her that, she had to leave because my grandmother died. And my mother came up like a half hour later to tell me that the hospital had just called and my grandmother passed away. So, yeah, I used to freak out my, younger friends at the time when I would do things like that. But I don't know if it increased my gifts or if it just helped them come through, a few years later when I went through like a huge trauma and that's what brought it out.
Hmm. Yeah, it's really no way of knowing. So,
Mhm.
I mean, with me, with the premonitions and having that traumatic one and me shutting it down, when I did have that reawakening at 30, premonition side of it never came back. So, and I don't know if that was because I'm still stifling it, even though I'm not intentionally doing it, or if it just wasn't meant to be. You know what I mean? So it's interesting, though, that some people who have never even had any kind of gift suddenly come back and all of a sudden there's this ability that they didn't even know existed that arisen and surfaced, and they've got to figure out what they're supposed to do with it.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. At least when it happened to me, I knew from when I was younger. But at the same time, when it happened, I did think I was going crazy.
Mm, I'll bet.
Yeah, it was really, really rough. I mean, I kept telling my husband to take me to the mental institutions and because I literally thought I was going insane.
Wow. Good thing you figured it out, huh?
Yeah.
Well, I know that you said that with your best friend's death and how the public treated his death for you sent you on a journey of knowledge.
Mhm.
Wow. What exactly? How?
It was weird because where I grew up, it wasn't far from Pittston, PA. And when I was little, I remember Ed and Lorraine Warren being there for the Smurl hunting. And so
What hunting?
it was the Smurl, Smurl. It was a case in Pittston, PA. I remember when I was a child, like locals called it like the Hell House. I don't know what they called it in their case studies, but I just remember, hearing about them on our local news. And, so at that point, I really got an interest in like, oh, what is this stuff? And of course, I never let anybody in my family know about it, but I just absorbed everything I could about, the paranormal, supernatural information. And so when all of this happened with my friend, I knew that there was things out there and people out there. So I started seeking people that
Right.
had an interest in the paranormal and were investigating the paranormal.
And you could be with like-minded people.
Right, because I wanted to find answers for myself because I didn't care what, the churches were telling me, what other people were telling me. I felt the only way to know for sure was to try to find proof myself.
Did you finally get acceptance from your mom and dad?
I my dad got Alzheimer's disease at a very young age.
Oh, sorry.
So unfortunately, started losing him in my 20s when I was really
Oh,
getting heavily
wow.
involved again in this.
That's really
And
young.
and he
Yeesh.
passed away when I was in my probably late 20s, early 30s. And I was
Oh,
also and he was older, him and my mom were older when they had me. I was one of those oopsie babies
mhm.
because my sister and brother were 10 and 12 when I was born. So I was definitely not planned. So they were older when they had me. So he was in his
I
50s when he passed away.
came kind of same situation. I wasn't an oopsie, but there was a child in between my middle sister and I, and she passed away. So I came later in life, and they were 8 and 12 years older than I too.
Yeah.
And so my parents, they were up there in age. So I always had the parents that everybody thought were my grandparents when
Well, I
we
was
still lived
yeah,
at
I
my
was lucky they weren't
best.
I don't know if they aged well or I didn't have that issue, but they were older, but they also had my brother and sister young because they were married when my mom was 20.
I can't believe he had Alzheimer's so young though and died
Yeah.
in his 50s.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
he had the early onset. He started showing signs in his 40s.
Oh my gosh, that's so horrible. I'm so sorry to hear that. Has he come back to you? Has he come to see you at all?
I see signs, but I don't ever see him.
Isn't that
And I
crazy? The
have the
people
same
you really want
experience
to
with my
see.
brother.
People you want to see. You're only
Yeah,
getting some. They're not.
I can feel at times my brother around me, but he doesn't attempt to communicate with me. I can feel him though, and I can feel my dad, but I haven't ever had any communication with either of them. And I
Mhm.
always see little things that, remind me of my dad, but I think, he sent me like a butterfly in winter.
Right. So
Things
you
that you
know,
don't expect to see.
sure. Now, did mom accept things?
Mom has gotten a lot better. It took her a while, but I've been on my own journey and she finally came to accept that I was always going to be different and I wasn't going to fit in this little box that she felt I should fit into. And
Right.
so yeah, she listens to my stories, I wonder sometimes if she believes them or not. But she goes with it. When I come back from my travels, she'll always ask me what happened, what did I experience? So she's gotten a lot better.
Oh, that's good. I am impressed that you have become a paranormal teacher. Can you elaborate on what you do? I mean, you had the opportunity to study under many veterans in the field, and you were a guest a few times on Paranormal Insider Radio discussing Gettysburg hauntings and near death experiences. Um, it's amazing to me. It really is.
Yeah, I really went in once my kids got a little bit older. Well, they weren't extremely older, but I really my when my son had his experience, I started seeking out investigators to help me explain it and understand it because he for the longest time he was telling me there was a black thing following him, and in my mind I went, oh my goodness, that's got to be something demonic. And so I was afforded the opportunity to study with some pretty amazing people because I actually sought them out for help. I my friend had told me about certain TV shows, and yeah, we were in the car and we went off to see them because I was just looking for one person to help me, to help me figure out what was going on with my son. And that's how I actually met Lorraine Warren. And, she was the one who explained to me that just because it was something dark he was seeing didn't mean it was actually evil. And that, when because he was so young, his probably wasn't allowing the images to come directly through. And then as he got a little bit older, I realized that she was right because we were in Gettysburg and he saw a soldier on the battlefield and decided he wanted to follow it. So, and he's the one that's now stifled everything. He doesn't wanna have
Oh, he
anything to do with it.
stifled it.
Yeah,
Uh,
he was very gifted. I mean, he constantly would see things to the point we made him little jars to teach him how to keep things away from him. He had, like, a little salt shaker that we filled with bells and stuff, and he would shake it and say, "Go away," "Go away." And it got to a point where he put a sign on his door that would say, like, "No ghosts in here." And
um,
so he learned ways to protect himself. And as he got older, he just didn't, nope, I don't want to have anything to do with this anymore. I'm tired of it. I don't want these things coming to me anymore. And he was able to shut it off.
well, that's crazy. I used to see it as a dark shadow, and I was 5, I think it was the first time. And of course, it terrified me because I was a kid and didn't know that he was just trying to get my attention because he knew I could see him. And then I had my mom telling me, "Oh, it's just a dream. It's just a dream." So it wasn't until I actually avoided seeing him by moving my room down into the basement that I didn't see him anymore. And I always say to everybody, if I could just go back to that house again and tell him, "I'm sorry. I understand that you just wanted me to listen." But
I was very lucky. I did get to go back to the house I grew up in, to, see if I could see those things again. I was able to stay there with my dad for the last probably 6 to 8 months of his life. And, I did still have experiences. They were definitely a lot different than I had in childhood. And it seemed like things didn't come out more, but I would hear them and I would feel them. So, for me, that was interesting. I was like, are they hiding from me because I wouldn't listen to them when I was a kid?
yeah, yeah, it could be. Who knows? I mean, you'll never know, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately, now I can't go back because my mom doesn't live there anymore. And the woman that owned the house passed away. So,
Yeah. Well, I know you investigated Malvern Manor in Iowa, the West Virginia Penitentiary in West Virginia, the Bel Air House in Maryland, Mansfield Reformatory in Ohio, just to name a few.
yeah.
What exactly is it that you do when you go on one of these investigations? Are you with the team or what?
I would go with teams. For a while, I was traveling with a group of friends. It was like a girls' weekend, and most
That was
girls get together, go shopping, and have wine. We got together to go ghost hunting. So yeah, for a while, like I was doing it, on field trips with a team, and then after I was no longer, going with that team, I went out with my girlfriends, and that's basically what we did.
Are they like-minded or do they have abilities like you or are they just doing it for fun?
It's a mix. Some have abilities, some are very into the scientific side of it, and others are doing it, just to see what's out there.
What is your title and what is your job then when you do that?
I don't know, because I don't think we really have titles within, our friends group. It's basically we all do our own thing. Like I will not listen to like the historical, I won't go on the tours, I don't do any of that. I like to walk through and experience things and then corroborate it with my friends who have gone on the tours to know where the hauntings are.
Hmm.
So, and where all the reports are. So I go into it completely cold. So I guess you could say I kind of work in the psychic realm. I'm very bad with tech. Uh, I tend to break it. So people try to avoid giving me anything techy. So yeah, I would definitely say I'm more on the psychic realm of things, and yeah, because I have had so many psychic experiences in so many places.
So you don't even use traditional methods like dowsing rods or
I do
pendulums?
have dowsing rods. I have a pendulum that I'll use. I do, different. I do automatic writing once in a while if I'm feeling led to that. I have a
Mhm.
notebook that I'll carry with me and just sit in a location and just zone out and let whoever wants to try to, communicate through me if they can. I did have an experience in Uniontown at a location there where I actually had a spirit like attach itself to me and try speaking through me. It was the first time I had ever experienced that. So it kind of scared me.
Yeah, what'd that feel like?
I don't remember a lot of it. Because my friend that was with me said she literally saw my eyes roll into the back of my head. And then she was trying to, and I listened to the recording afterwards and have absolutely zero memory of it happening because
Mhm.
she was trying to pull me up the basement steps and you could hear her screaming, I've got you, I've got you. And all I could say, it was like, sounded like Gollum from Lord of the Rings yelling
Mhm.
back to her, I've got her. And, so everybody was panicked at that point because even
Oh
people
boy, I
that were
imagine.
in other parts of the house came like, running down to see what happened. But as soon as she got me outside of the house, it went away.
Wow.
And yeah, it was just like I woke up from a dream and I had until we listened back to it and I didn't believe it happened and other people didn't believe it happened until they actually listened to the audio recording of it.
Wow. That's amazing. Now that writing that you were speaking of a short time ago, did that ever warrant any kind of evidence that you could actually compare to notes or what other people have told?
I do know at a location in Maryland is where I did the most extensive part of it, and I did have, like jail cells come up. And then later in the evening, we found out way, way in the back of the building that there were actual jail cells. And but other than that, I've never like I've had once in a while, I've had like a couple of like initials or letters. And it's sometimes it's, gone into, like, someone who had lived in the home or someone who had been in the home.
Hmm.
But that's the most I don't do that one very often because I'm
Just when
still
you're called
learning the
to do it.
technique.
Sure. Well, you've conducted hundreds of private investigations. I mean, I've done quite a few myself because readers of my books reach out to me asking for my paranormal team to go in and see what's going on. How do you get your private investigations? People know about you in town or?
Yeah, through, I live in an area for some reason that seems to be like a real hot spot, and I've been doing this for, my goodness, it's like a little over 30 years now. So like, when people hear hundreds, they're like, "But it's not like I'm every weekend going and doing private investigations." It's over a culmination of 30 years.
Sure.
And, some of them have actually been repeat investigations. Like, there's a home local to here that is near it was a hospital for years, and we would constantly be going in there every so many months because their house was literally across the, parking lot from the emergency room entrance of the hospital. Now, we haven't gotten called out there in a long time since the hospital shut down. So, we're thinking that there was a correlation between the energy coming from the
Sure.
emergency room into their
Mhm.
home, and to top it off, there was a speakeasy in the basement during Prohibition. So,
A combination of that.
yeah.
I've heard from so many people, even hospital employees, that there is so much activity in hospitals and people who are in the paranormal and spiritual world have said that cleansing of hospitals could just be pretty much every day
Yep,
because
I
of all the shit
agree.
that happens constantly. And some people who are sensitive can't even go into a hospital and feel comfortable there because it's just so overwhelming.
Yeah, the energy, like my daughter, as was born with a brain injury at birth, and at 2 years old, she was operated on at Hopkins. And the only peace I felt was when I would go into, like, they had an area in the hospital for the Divine Mercy Chaplet. So I would go in there and sit because it was the only place I got peace.
Mm, that's interesting. They wouldn't go around that area, huh?
Yeah, and I don't know why. Maybe because they knew people were praying and, dealing with their own stuff.
Uh-huh.
But and I know for me personally, like when I'm doing more public type of investigations, I can honestly say asylums are my favorite. Just because I feel as a psychic, I'm sharing the stories of the people
Right.
and what they experienced in those locations.
Sure. I currently live just outside of Raleigh, North Carolina, in Franklinton. And you
Mhm.
mentioned a place called Rhine Institute. I've
Yes,
never
the
heard of it.
Rhine.
What exactly is that?
Okay, the Rhine used to actually be a part of Duke University. And then it kind of separated off onto its own. And it is a parapsychology research center where they research, the paranormal and parapsychology and psychic abilities. And I know the last time I was there, they were doing research about, I can't remember the exact term, but it was like ions that the body produces. And they put people into a vacuum, and they were studying like yogis and reiki masters and psychics and all these different types of people to see how much their bodies give off, and during when they're doing this psychic work to try to prove that the psychic energy is real. And they do a lot of research on remote viewing and other different types of psychic phenomena. Like I think it's once or twice a year they have something called the Psy Games, where they actually, like, it's like an Olympics for psychics. So
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah, and it's I can't remember. I think it's in like the Raleigh Durham area. I know it's like right outside, I think, of Raleigh, because I'm pretty sure we stayed in Raleigh when we've been there. And it's just a little small building where they have all the old psychic experiments, like lighting up the light bulbs with your mind. And they have, another light bulb there where they try to get like collective energy to change the colors. And they do different types of psychic testing with like the Zener cards and things like that there.
Well, how did you come to be there?
We were actually on a field trip when I was with the Paranormal Research Society down there, and that was one of the locations that we actually went to spend the day.
You define remote viewing for the listeners?
Remote viewing is basically when someone is in one location, but they can view what's happening in another location, but they're not physically there.
And they probably like record it just to see if what they're saying and what they're seeing is
Right. It was
okay.
very, like, they claim it was very popular with like Project Stargate during the Cold War.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was something that there are claims that the government were utilizing remote viewers to kind of like spy on other countries.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's like you can get into like reading on like Project MK Ultra and Project Stargate kind of gets into that.
Hmm. So what came out of that Rhine experience?
I basically got to learn about myself as a psychic person because I did a lot of the psychic testing, and just seeing that there are people out there that are still doing, because there's only, that I know of, two parapsychological organizations like that in the world, and one is in North Carolina and the other one is in, I believe it's Edinburgh, Scotland.
Did they let
The
you know what your score was? Did they give you your score?
Yeah, I know I scored extremely high because I had to beg everybody not to tell people, like, what my score was because I know, like, they were pretty shocked with how high my score was.
Wow.
So, yeah, I was shocked myself because I was like, "I didn't expect to do that well."
So that's how you said you learned so much about yourself then.
Yeah, it really is, and then from there, I basically learned, the more you use it and the more you practice with it, the better and stronger you get at it.
Do you devote any time regularly to doing that, to enhancing and
Every
learning?
day.
Really?
Yeah,
What's your
every
routine?
day. Well, I'm half Native American, so when I wake up in the morning, I do a Lakota smudging ritual, to just cleanse my body and my mind, and then I just try to sit and like listen to what I call like the collective consciousness to see if there's anything around talking to me, if I can feel anything, if I can smell anything or taste anything. And, I usually spend, I would say, a good 20 minutes just, trying to listen and feel what's around me.
Okay. And what then?
Pretty much I get on with my day because I'm still a housewife technically, but I have my little small at home like crafting business. So, and then in the evenings, I do a lot of meditation and deep meditation rituals. And of course, I read cards and try to do some mediumship exercises with connecting to someone on the other side.
When you say that you do meditation, I mean, I've always tried my hand at that and I find it so difficult to do that. Does it take time, to get
Yes.
used to it, I guess?
Yes,
Yeah.
it does for me when I first started doing it. I have, complete ADHD extremely bad. I don't like to sit still. And I started out in small increments, listening to something for 5 minutes at a time where I could completely try to focus on it. And every so many weeks adding a few more minutes on it. And now I can allow myself to meditate for about an hour now.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
And when you say you read cards, what do
yeah.
you mean by reading the cards?
I do read tarot, but not often. I don't like that as much as I do oracle readings, with oracle cards, and I'm more
What
of an
does that mean?
intuitive. Their oracle cards are similar to tarot, but they're not tarot. You get these guidebooks that are strict about this is what swords means and this is what the cups mean and this is what these things all mean. Where oracle for me, it's more of an intuitive connection where I look at the card and I ask the card what it wants to tell me about the person I'm reading for or myself, what message I need to hear. And yeah, I've been doing that, oh my goodness, for a very long time. I started with tarot when I was younger in my teen years. And then someone introduced me to the oracle cards, and there's so many different ones out there depending upon what you connect with as a person.
You don't just randomly do the cards at home for yourself. You're doing these for clients.
I actually do readings for myself. I try to
I
pull
mean,
one card
what
in the morning to tell me like, where I'm at and what I should be focusing on for the day. And then in the evenings, I try to pull another one.
as a guide,
Yeah,
helpful guide.
kind of like, like as a guide for myself.
I know that you
And
mentioned that your focus over the last 2 years has been writing and aiding new and young paranormal investigators on their paths in the field.
right.
So, where do you find these paranormal investigators?
Sometimes they just land in my lap. Honestly, I find, especially in the area I live in, I have a lot of younger people who know what I do, especially like from my kids and from other people that I've worked with in the area. So
Word
I've
of mouth.
been, yeah, pretty much. And, and that's basically how I got involved with Phantom Detectives is my friend in Canada, believe it or not, had met Joshua and recommended, hey, you should connect with this person. And Joshua and I connected, and I've been working with him with developing this whole spirituality and occult research department.
One thing leads to another, right?
Exactly. And I think people come into our lives when they're meant to be. And I was just getting ready after a long sabbatical during COVID to jump back in to it. And he fell right into my lap. Yeah, I've been talking to younger kids in the area, teaching them, especially for me, the importance of learning how to be safe as an investigator and learning how to be respectful. Like, because I know a
Oh,
lot of the
yeah.
kids my son's age, they want to break into places. They want, they
Yeah.
want to do things that are dangerous, not only, physically, but also psychically with not knowing, are you going into a
You
building
are
that's falling
right on.
apart?
Those are the two most important things, I think. Absolutely. Respecting spirit because they were human in life, they're human in death.
Hmm.
And being safe about those other things that you really don't consider when you're doing something, and even what you may encounter, and being able to handle it and be prepared for it.
And I know from being a young investigator myself when I started, that's how I was. I didn't think about the cost of my health and, getting injured.
Yeah.
I just wanted to go, "Oh, there's an empty building here. Oh, let's go." You know? And so I think it's really important for us as older investigators to really work with the younger ones to say, "Hey, be safe, be respectful,
You're
do
right.
things the right way."
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. Well, how does one find you and what do they need to do? Because now you're on my show and people are going to
Yes.
be listening to it and they're
I
going to be
have a
like, I want to
Yep.
find her.
Well, I have a Facebook page. It's a business Facebook. It's just Holly Faust, author and psychic medium. I'm also on TikTok, although I haven't been as active as lately, but you can find me there as Native Crafty Witch. We're hoping to get more active. I've had like a 1 year where I haven't really done a lot of anything, and I'm slowly now getting back in the groove. Um, and yeah, we're going to be sharing a lot of information on TikTok about hauntings and experiences and things like that. I have books on Amazon, two of
Okay.
them. There's two
And
more coming out.
the names.
My first book was called My Journey Out of Darkness, and that's just the story of how I got involved in the paranormal and the early years of my career. And then my second one is for people that are interested more in, the witch movement. And it's just called The Witch's Book of Things. And it just speaks about simple, truths behind magic.
Gotcha. And you said native on TikTok, you're native what? Native
Crafty Witch,
crafty
and then
witch.
Witch, WITCH.
Gotcha. Because
Yeah.
I'm gonna find you on TikTok and I'm
Oh,
gonna follow
just let
you.
me know it's you because I am at the point now where I can't. I'm they only allow you to follow 10,000 people. So
Oh,
I'm constantly deleting people to add people that I actually know. So
it looks like the picture is like a little pink girl emoji kind of thingy. Is
yes,
that you? All
yep,
right,
it
I
could
just
be that is
followed.
my business. Yeah, that is my one of the pictures I did for my business. So
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, I just followed you and you'll see me. I'm author Eleanor Wagner. So I have my little
okay.
picture there, so you should be able to see
Yes,
me.
I've got you.
All right, so I found her. So anybody out there who's looking for her will be able to find her too. And on Facebook is pretty easy, Holly Faust. So
Yep, just Holly
um,
Faust. And then I have like author and psychic medium after it because it's a business page.
wonderful. Well, thank you so much for this lovely conversation. I appreciate you coming and spending some time with me.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
And to my listeners out there, if you like listening to this week's episode and you're into all things paranormal, check out my other show, Eleanor Wagner's Creeping It Real podcast, out of the Coast to Coast Entertainment Network, which is available wherever you get your podcasts. If you miss any episode, you can watch it and listen to it directly on my Eleanor Wagner YouTube channel. And if any of you are interested in reading any of my books, you can find them on Amazon, but you can get signed copies directly through me at authoreleanorwagner@gmail.com. I write about the history of the town and location. I add the paranormal story to the mix and finish it all off with photos and evidence. Thanks for tuning in.